All righty, Grand Rising, everyone. This is Ron. Uh, Sunday morning, August 3rd, a little after 11 a.m. So let's get started, see if we're having any questions. I think we were left with a discussion we started yesterday from a question that Charles started. You guys want to start with that one first? Charles, are you on?
Yes, I'm on, Ryan.
How you doing
How
this
you
morning?
doing?
I'm great, man.
I'm
We,
good. I'm
uh,
good. I'm good.
Nick had some insight into your question. I didn't know if you wanted to restate it or not, uh, so we can just refresh everybody from where we were yesterday.
I give a little stale, cut at it. Try.
Okay.
The question I had asked, since Nimrod and the people was building the Tower of Babylon, and they got scattered for doing what they was doing. Now it seems like American and other countries, they, especially European, always rushing out of space to, well, they're doing the same thing. They always leaving the Earth, going into space, and then they're talking about trying to relocate on another planet in space. And and I know that's power is doing that, but not only trying to locate in space, they trying to take people from the Earth and put them on another planet because they're saying the Earth is getting too small and too populated. And I might not saying everything exactly what I had said, and I'm trying to think of anything else. And well, mostly I was saying it was there any clarity of the building the tower is almost the same thing about the using spaceships still trying to get in space, and I know they're trying to they ain't trying to see God, but they use that of seeking God and find minerals on other planets to make our life more better. So that's how I saw it.
I'm
I
sorry.
hope Nick can. I hope Nick can carry that little stuff.
I could certainly try. Hey, y'all. Hope you're all doing all right.
How we doing?
Good, good. Yeah, thank you for the question. My understanding of the sort of uh, story of the Tower of Babel is that imagine if a group of people or a majority of people dedicated their focus and effort towards a very egotistical and selfish project. So in that sense, it's like if the majority of the earth or group of people choose to collectively dedicate themselves to something that is egotistical or selfish, and it could be, the construction of uh, something that would be used for religious uh, practices, religious in the um, sort of materialist sense, and not the with any sense of spirituality. But if this group of people dedicated themselves to an egotistical project, then it would be perhaps necessary or beneficial to break up that project so that in their ignorance, they don't completely destroy everything. And that is my understanding of sort of the episode of the Tower of Babel. So its relationship to what we see today in these billionaires in particular building, literal towers. It's similar in that we are also seeing them dedicate their energy and time to egotistical projects. Their desire to get out into space is nothing more than to find new areas into which they can expand their own, uh, for the most part, selfish ambition. It is the desire to extend even beyond the Earth their desire to recreate this model of material consumption, even within whatever they find within space. So Jeff Bezos is probably worse than Elon Musk in a lot of ways, even though Elon Musk is also one of them, quote unquote. But Elon Musk is slightly less egotistical in some ways, I believe, because he at least has the idea that what he does will benefit humanity, whereas Jeff Bezos wanted to go to space because he thought it was fun. And more than that, if you remember his speech afterwards, if you saw that, where he was like, "Thank you for buying things. You paid for this." So there's like a spectrum of ego upon which a lot of these people are operating. And it is to address that point that sometimes is raised, where these types of people say things like, "Oh, the Earth is overpopulated. We need to get off it, or we need to get resources from, off of the Earth." The idea that the Earth is overpopulated, quote unquote, is a lie. The issue is not too many people. The issue is resource allocation. Who controls resources that determine the quality of people's lives? And the idea that there are too many people is something that negative or selfish mindset likes to focus on, because it puts the blame off of them for hoarding resources and making it impossible to sustain the groups of people across the Earth. Yeah, there's too many people when you are stealing the resources that would feed those people. Like, what? That is an idea that they promote. Were the Earth in a more harmonious, well, speaking specifically about social and economic balance, and a sort of more natural flow of resources through communities and people, the Earth could sustain twice as many people as it has now. More than likely, the population would decrease naturally if more people had less hardship to deal with. Because you don't, it's like if you have a farm, you want to have as many children as possible to help you work the farm, type of idea behind that. When you have less stress and less work, you don't worry about needing to perpetuate yourself in the same way. So the whole phenomenon of, well, at least the whole social and economic phenomenon behind these billionaires and powerful people attempting to get into space is very much just an egotistical project. In the same way that I believe, in my understanding of the Tower of Babel sort of story, that it was the group dedication to an egotistical project that would have been much more destructive had it not been sort of broken apart. So there is a lot more to space in particular, spiritually and metaphysically. But what we see in these billionaires, etc., actions are an attempts to project their ego into a place where it has no business being. and I mean ego itself. Because, as I said, the idea that there's too many people is a resources issue. It's an issue of the sort of greed and hoarding of resources. When you get into space, and especially when they say things like, "Oh, we're going to mine asteroids," like etc., that is possible. But the idea that these resources are finite begins to break down, because if you've sort of read and heard anything about it, for example, there are asteroids floating in space that contain more gold or more whatever than exists on the Earth. So the idea that these resources are finite is also a lie that it's not exactly a complete lie, but the way we hoard and distribute those resources creates a scarcity that is itself an illusion that is perpetuated by people who simply want to remain in powerful positions and want to be able to continue to hoard that wealth and those resources. There are more resources than we could ever possibly use. It is just a question of how we use them. So I'll stop there for now. Does that help, or does that make sense?
It makes sense, Nick. I know Audrey was hitting a little bit on the same line that you was talking about.
Yeah.
Grand rising, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning. This is Barbara.
Hey, Bob.
May I add, Nick, may I add to what you said?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Hello. Oh, okay. I agree with what you said. There is, in a universe that's infinite, there is no limitation. In a spiritual reality that we are in, there is no limitation. The Tower of Babel represents to me man's asinine, egotistical mindset to be the God of materialism rather than the God of spirituality that it is. And there's a big difference in that. The Tower of Babel also reminds me of everything that you talked about. The quest for AI, sentient AI, which can think for itself. The quest for all of the minerals to do whatever man in man's mindset can envision doing, apart from the principles of spirituality that relate to the do unto others as you would have them do unto yourself. Apart from the principles of treat your neighbor as yourself, and your neighbor is you, and you are your neighbor. So it is a totally different path, I see, than the spiritual path of Ma'at. And so for us, the Tower of Babel is everything that's happening today that is construed to be against and weaponized against humanity for the sake of greed and power for man. So it's man's quest to be to reach enlightenment, although he doesn't call it that. But that's what it is. He wants to be his own God on his own terms, in his own realm, whether that's earth or the skies, at any cost. at any cost, regardless of the effect that it has on humankind in general. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree completely. That idea that I think that is the fundamental sort of distinction between what we refer to as the European or Neanderthal mindset that produces chaos and attempts to install itself at the top of an artificial hierarchy that it imposes onto the rest of the natural flow. And that distinction is that it it declares itself God within the context of its confusion and focus purely on materialism. And in so doing, it the rest of its actions follow. But the distinction is that it declares itself God out of egotism, whereas the human mindset or the African mindset recognizes that God is inclusive of all things, and that there is even the attempt at defining or projecting your ego is essentially a violation of what that truly is. Anyway, thank you.
I'm listening, and I see that though the tower is indicative of what's happening today in terms of materialism, yet it remains the gate of God. And what do I mean by that? The materialism that we are experiencing ultimately results in the chaos that we are also experiencing. And the force of the evilness of all of it is a force that pushes us to the gate of God. It pushes us to that space that, for lack of a better word, forces us to recalibrate ourselves in relationship to what's going on. And that recalibration brings us to a place where we cry out for something better. And in our crying for something better, we ultimately find this space that's called the entrance or the gateway to the Creator, the gateway to Elohim. And when we find that, we travel that journey. And as we travel the journey, becoming aware of of the transformation that takes place in us as we cross the threshold of that gateway. And as a result of crossing that threshold, we begin to see an increase in the chaos. And when we look at it with our eyes, we see the detriment of all of it. However, when we see it through our eye, we see that it is definitely the catalyst that brings us to a space of change. And there is no way that the Creator would allow the seemingly insurmountable chaos that we are enduring to happen if there were not a remedy for it and a reason. The reason for the chaos is because of the mindset of the Neanderthal. That's where it emanates. Yet the reason for allowing that to happen is to be more, to result in us realizing who Elohim is. And we only find that when we look in the mirror. And I'm talking about the spiritual mirror. And now that we are on this journey, now that we are in this place, we began to see a change. And that change does not look like anything that we thought it would look like. Why is it that the African is taking a back seat to all that's happening? The reason the African is taking a back seat to all that's happening is because the African mindset is in a place of observation. What is happening? Everyone, meaning the white people who are suffering from this, the Hispanics who are suffering from this, even those who are from the Caribbean who are being deported as well, crying out, asking, where are the Black Americans? Where are the African Americans? Why are they doing that? They are beginning to recognize who Africans are in terms of being divine. No one can help us except those of you who have experienced this in the streets before. Why don't you come save us is virtually what they are saying. And now that we are in understanding the sacred writings that we call the Bible, now that we are seeing the things that Nick and Barbara were talking about, and I just came in to the conversation when Nick was speaking. Now that we are seeing those things, we cannot allow ourselves to see them as the end, or as something that cannot be defeated, or something that's going to overwhelm the world. It has already done that. What is happening now is that we see as chaos is actually the same chaos that was happening 100 years ago. It was just behind the scenes until there was put in place a group of Africans with the African mindset who begun to recognize who they are. And now that is a buffer between the chaos and those who are suffering from it. That spiritual buffer is keeping it from being worse. And at the same time, bringing it to, allowing it to grow to a place where it implodes on itself as those who seek to dominate are really dismantling the world that they created for themselves. And this is what we describe as the crumbling of an empire, when in essence, right now is different than any crumbling of any empire that's ever existed. This is different. This is the establishment of the reality that the African mindset is divine. That has never been done before since this chaos begun. This African mindset is divine, and the divinity of it is bringing to a screeching halt the the world domination that has given people with the European mindset, Neanderthal mindset, that they are God. Their self description of them being God is being exposed as them being the problem, as opposed to the ones who are solving the problems of humanity. So I say Ashe to what is being said, as well as saying Ashe to the understanding that this chaos is the catalyst that has brought us to where we are currently. I'm done. Thank you.
Shay. Thank you. Very much agree.
You're welcome.
Charles, yeah, was that clear too? I'm sorry, someone else gonna speak.
Yes, I was. Going back to the tower, it said everyone had the same language, and when God came down, he confused the language. So that means everybody couldn't speak the same language they were speaking before. Now, Pastor, I want to understand what type of language was the world speaking at that time for them to all could come together as one. I mean, were they speaking the language that God was speaking to them?
I got you, Charles.
I mean, okay.
Please understand that this is not talking about the languages that we currently speak or the languages of anyone having spoken, because we are not talking about individuals or groups of people. We are talking about spiritual concepts. And today, when the language of hatred is being spoken, we say we don't understand how you can take a 10-year-old boy, separate him from his daddy, and send his dad, deport his daddy, and keep him in a concentration camp. That's a language that's being spoken that we don't understand. So would you please make sure your phones are muted? Thank you. That's a language we don't understand. And when we talk about we don't understand how someone can actually lynch people, boil them in oil, or cut them to pieces, or skin them and make wallets and belts out of them, and then go to church in the next 15 minutes and send souvenirs to their friends and allow their children to be a part of this type of these types of barbaric acts. That's a language that we don't understand. So when we're talking about the Tower of Babel, we're not talking about Spanish and Kiswahili. We're not talking about Kiluo. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about a language that is being spoken that you cannot spiritually understand. And the reason you can't understand that language is because that's not your mindset. That's foreign to you. To know how someone can cut a baby from a pregnant mother's womb and let it dangle while she is lynched, while she's being hung on a tree. That's not the language that we speak. So we're not talking about a language as we use now in human terms. We're talking about the spiritual nature of that type of language. Does that make sense, guys? Not just Charles, any.
Makes
Yes,
yeah,
you
sense to
resonate.
me.
Yes. Yes.
And hello, everyone. This is Sheldon. Greetings and good day. And another point to go back to what Nick and Ms. Barbara said before, the emphasis in terms of here what they're talking about language, what that language is actually being tied to. And that language or that mindset, rather, that they're talking about is the reason the desire to actually build this tower. And the reason was to not to, in a sense, get to know and be God, but it was more so from an egotistical standpoint to make themselves equal to God, separate from God, but equal. And so that was the language that had to be destroyed so that they would not stay along that path from that egotistical standpoint, and much along in the same type of way that Pastor Richard was just talking about. I'm finished for the moment.
Thank you. You know, when you said equal to God, something came to me about that. That is the reason that all of the inventions and all of the creativity of the African is being appropriated by that European mindset, because it is seeking to be as God is. And what I am saying in essence is, even though the racism exists, even though I've never found a white person who, for $1 billion, would change places with us in terms of being Black and us being white. Yet, that mindset of that Neanderthal seeks to be as the African is, but not the mindset, by virtue of usurping, attempting rather to usurp the power that the African has in its creativity, in its ability to be one with the earth, one with nature, and at the same time be one with each other, and having a desire to not only be creative, but to be inventive, meaning to bring comfort to life, like the invention of the air conditioner, or like the simple tool of oil in the wheels on a train. These kinds of things that Europeans are claiming that they brought into existence, that is an effort to usurp the power of God, and there are those who know that, and not being able to do that, they keep enough of us around. They seek rather to keep enough of us around to rob or to steal the creativity that we bring forth. So that's what came to my mind, Sheldon, when you were talking about them trying to be God. Does it make sense?
It does. And another part, which is even wilder in a sense, and I was thinking about this yesterday when Charles first brought the concept up, well, the question up, and I couldn't help but think about it the entire time that Nick was talking about space exploration. The so-called, well, the African and the so-called, I'm doing air quotes, tribal people or persons around the earth have been traveling to space for thousands of years from a spiritual standpoint and have not been handicapped by having to try to do it from a physical standpoint. And it is that Neanderthal way of thinking, a language of at once purposely because of egotistical reasons, separating themselves from God, but trying to be equal to God, that actually cut themselves off from those types of experiences, and then inherently make it where they have to make these pursuits from a physical standpoint. The other part that I was thinking about as well is even the connection to when we're talking about the spiritual world and the physical world, and how the spiritual world brings the physical world into fruition. The conversation from the guy about masculinity and femininity. And so all of it's the same, and we're right back at the same exact place as we actually look at this in terms of only seeing with the, and for anyone who's just joining the new, whenever we talk about the two eyes and we talk about the third eye, we're talking about the eye. We're simply talking about we're seeing with the two eyes, your normal, regular physical eyes is just actually seeing the physical world. When we talk about the third eye, or we say the eye singular, we're talking about the eye, which all of us have in understanding and seeing in the spiritual world, or seeing from a spiritual perspective. And the people of Babel, what we're talking about right now with the likes of Jeff Bezos, looking through the eyes, excuse me, not recognizing, taking into account, acknowledging their third eye, and therefore being forced to have these pursuits because of their language and their mindset to monopolize and control a limited physical world. Not that it's not enough, but limited in terms of trying to dominate it and abuse it while totally ignoring the spiritual, not only in the world, but the spiritual within themselves, denying that. I'm finished at the moment.
Thank you. Audrey?
Well, I have a question. And I understand what you're saying about the European/Neanderthal mindset versus the African. But if we think about Nimrod, if he was a real person, he would have been African. So in light of that, he would have had the mindset that we're talking about, I think. So in that case, what's the lesson there? Is it material versus spiritual intent? Is that the lesson?
I believe the lesson there is a message that has been overlooked for centuries. And that message is to those who have the ear to hear, or the desire to hear, and the mindset to understand that a period will come in your life when the African will take on the mindset of materialism, and the trials and chaos that is going to bring is going to push the African, and I'm talking about mindset, to the place where it finds itself, or it goes back to its beginning and realize that that's not who it is. And when that happens, the African mindset will realize that it has the mindset of beginning. And the reason the African has to go through this journey of materialistic chaos is so it can create in its image. And the creating in its image puts materialism in perspective, meaning that the African mindset, as it becomes Elohim, realizes that it is Elohim, begins to transpose or to renew or not renew. That's not a good word. That's not a good description. They began to lead the world in such a way that a metamorphosis take place, and that metamorphosis that takes place transforms the mindset that the African in particular has embraced to a mindset of who it was in the beginning. And in doing so, will bring peace and harmony to the earth, and with righteousness being at the forefront and forgiveness being the twin to righteousness. And the dominant mindset becoming that of the African. But it doesn't happen unless the African goes through this process and gets to the place where it is forced to step into the role of being Elohim. And I do believe that the video that we looked at yesterday, I received that video from Angela. That video that we looked at yesterday is a precursor to that. And so I see that video and what we're talking about now being one. The precursor that I speak of is recognizing the divinity of femininity, recognizing and respecting the reality that it is the nurturing of femininity that guards our soul, and it is the masculinity that protects the existence. And I'm not talking about physical existence of femininity. I'm talking about protects the spiritual existence of femininity. And I know this is a long response, but this is what I'm seeing. Respect the existence of femininity, something that we have not done. And the disrespect for femininity is not calling females the B word or using the other words that were given to negate the humanity of femininity. I'm talking about the protection of existence is protecting the spiritual womb, the spiritual message from the womb, the spiritual understanding from that humanity came from that. So when we go back to Nimrod, we see all of this taking place in between the period of Nimrod and where we are now in terms of embracing the reality that we are Elohim, and the reality that femininity and the respect of it is paramount if we're ever going to experience what it means to be balanced in this earth, something that has not existed. So I hope that helps, Audrey.
I mean, it does. It does. So the lesson is that even whatever your mindset, if you're not balanced in what you're hearing and seeing and speaking, then the creator is going to intervene if it's not balanced. And if it is balanced, then you can do anything.
Yes.
Is that what I get from that?
Yes.
The story of Nimrod?
Yes. You can't do anything when you're balanced. And you only have chaos when you're not. Thank you.
Ashe.
Ashe.
This is Angela. I have a question. Pastor Richard, when you were just talking about the wound, that was the question that I was going to ask at the beginning. About how to heal the spiritual wound, as far as like getting rid of negative energies, the traumas, releasing it so that the spiritual wound within us can be not. I know we have a wound, but I'm not talking about it as for the physical, but the spiritual, just getting rid of the energies that that need to be released, such as traumas and negative energies in that way.
The first step that we have taken towards that healing is when we spoke about the abrasive and brutal way that African femininity has been treated in this earth, and how femininity has been dominated, and the power of it, the attempts to diminish the power of femininity, African femininity in particular. And when we poured out our hearts as males, the things that we recognize that we have done to enhance the ugliness of what has been directed towards African females, when we came together and embracing what resonated with us during that period of time, that was the first step towards healing. And the continued journey of healing comes not only with recognizing what was wrong, but it also recognizing what is right, meaning recognizing what it was to be from the beginning. And as we take this journey of seeing what femininity and masculinity was intended to be from the beginning, it is then that the scars of trauma begins to heal, but the memory of it remains. And the reason the memory remains, if you forget where you came from, if you forget what happened to bring this chaos, we are more likely to repeat it than we are to rise even further above it. So the journey to healing is continuous, and it takes on different forms as we move forward. But it definitely begins with our recognizing the wounds, the trauma, and embracing it, and not lying about it, and not denying that it exists. Does that help you, Angela?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just add to that, Pastor?
Sure.
I agree with everything you said. I also think that we each, as an individual, need to take some time to understand and know ourselves. And when we can do that, plus recognizing how out of balance we are, and recognizing what the spirituality that the Creator intended for us, then we can start to let go of some of those things, because we start to realize that they don't really matter, in the sense that if we know ourselves and we and we take the time to reflect on those things and understand how they fit into our lives, that they are there for a reason, that the struggle is part of the journey to get to know yourself. So then we can start to do the forgiveness work and the letting go of those things, those traumatic things. And then, you know, spending time in prayer or meditation, whatever you want to call it, plus getting back into nature, silencing some of the chaos that's around us all the time. Anyway, that kind of thing is what has worked for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you damage God? No. You feel damaged because you don't understand who you are. You get angry about things like slavery because you don't understand, we don't understand the spiritual essence of it. Had it not been for enslavement, this cadre of spiritual beings would not be the vanguard for humanity. That kind of trauma is difficult, yes. However, if it had not been necessary, the Creator would not allow it to be. And the sooner that we recognize that we are Elohim and embrace it wholeheartedly, it is then that we are able to read a newspaper or read a news feed or listen at a newscast and not get angry about it. Because when we talk about healing and we talk about the deliverance of humanity, ask yourself the question, is there anything too hard for God? And what you're actually asking the question to yourself, you're Elohim. Is there anything too difficult for you to accomplish? No. No. However, our attitude towards the things that are presented to our eyes and to our natural ears makes us feel like or believe or respond in a way that we think is too difficult for us to overcome, for Elohim to overcome. Elohim overcomes nothing because Elohim is over all that is. Elohim that recognizes who it is, no different than an heir to property recognizes who it is and moves to take authority over the property that belongs to you. Elohim takes authority over humanity, not because of humanity belongs to Elohim, but because Elohim is the overseer for humanity, is the balancing substance of humanity, is the love and kindness that is teaching those who don't have the African mindset. It is the forgiveness to those who have sought to wreak harm upon us, with us not realizing that Elohim cannot be destroyed. And that is the reason that we have ancestors. That is the reason that the ancestors guide us. And if you really want to think about it, the ancestors are Elohim just as we are. The difference is they have left the body, but they are still who they were when they were in the body. They didn't realize it. We have an advantage over that because we realize who we are. And in addition to realizing who we are, we embrace our ancestors. We embrace the ancestors of Elohim, meaning that we are being guided by a spiritual force that sees the true nature, the reality of everything that is. And that is the reason that we are able to respond to questions that we did not know were coming. That's the reason that we are able to maintain our calmness in the midst of the storm. That is the reason that we are able to look at the evilness of this earth and respond with love and kindness and desire for balance, as opposed to seeking to physically challenge it, to physically overpower it, because we know that we are the power that is bringing this to an end. Does all that make sense? Is that clear? That's who we are. Audrey?
I was just saying, yes, it makes sense.
I'm done.
Hey, Pastor, I have another question. So when all you was talking and saying what you were saying, now this is me. When we as Africans, we've been through what we've been through, and all the other, like the Indian, the Jews, and all them said they've been compensated for what they went through. It took me back to Abraham. And you remember when Abraham went to war to get Lot back, and when they come to give the spoils out to the people that went to the war and stuff, and Abraham said, "Give it to his warriors. Don't give me any, because I don't want them to think we blessed you." He was saying God was his portion, and it took me back saying, I see why we ain't never been compensated, because what we learning about our ancestors and the thing they put in the Bible to blind us, to keep us from knowing the truth, I'm thinking God's going to be the one to compensating us. And he compensating us now through what we're learning, or what we're seeing, or what was put in there was a lie. He is the one that's going to compensate us. I mean, if you can understand what I'm trying to say.
I do understand what you're saying, Charles, and I agree with you. I agree with you that we are the only people who have not received compensation for what we've gone through. And I agree with you that our compensation is not material. Our compensation is spiritual. And the spiritual compensation that we get is knowing who we are. And it is not God, as we've been taught, compensating us. It is our awareness that is compensation for what we have gone through. And the greatest compensation that we could ever enjoy is bringing balance to humanity. So no one would have to deal with this kind of insanity again. Does that make sense? Charles, does that help?
Yes, that helped a whole lot, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ron?
At the very beginning, we started with Charles's question from yesterday, and I did not ask if anyone else had questions. Is there anything else that you may have, any thoughts you have from yesterday, or something that may be on your mind that you'd like to ask at this time? Anybody? Okay. Well, You had enough for today? Is a good place to stop? Good place. Yes, sir.
California at 3 o'clock.
California at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you. Great discussion.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great day, everyone.
Have a
Thanks,
good day.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.